Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you will find stuff probably unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group with a large membership, and best of all, we're friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
Until their brothers break down, Reggie and Charlie Kray had been extremely smart. With Ronnie out of things, they had been free to use more subtlety than in the past. They had avoided trouble and had been quietly buttoning up their corner of the East End. Boom time was just around the corner. They had made peace with everyone, even the twins' old enemies, the Italian gangs of Clerkenwell. The night the Colonel shot up their social club was not referred to when his brothers drank with them at the Double R. More important still was their new friendship with Billy Hill. This strange entente with their old enemy was partly due to sentiment. Criminals are often sentimental men, and it pleased this rich but childless old gangster to find two respectful protégés. He could relive his life through theirs, and they were always more than grateful for his advice. There was a practical reason, too, for Billy Hill's concern with the Krays. Although retired, he still had interests in London, mainly in gambling, and he needed people like the Krays to watch them for him. Quietly, he began to back the Krays, showing them an opening here, fixing an introduction there, leading them to a new, rich world, which promised to become an El Dorado of organized crime. Illicit gambling had always been the bedrock of the capitalism of London crime. When Spot and Hill ruled London, their steadiest profits had come from the illegal gambling clubs they controlled, and the Krays, too, made their modest livings from East End spielers. By the mid-50s, gaming fever had hit London. Illicit gambling was turning into a major industry, which was still effectively controlled by the underworld. Even the chemi parties, organized by well-publicized figures, flitting from address to fashionable address around Belgravia, were paying their nightly cut to someone in the background, by whose permission play continued undisturbed. And through the influence of Billy Hill, Charlie and Reggie had been introduced to several of these parties as unofficial minders. They showed promise, particularly Charlie. He looked well in a dinner jacket. He was interested in gambling, and had the right amount of toughness and deference to reassure the customers. More important still, the Krays were getting their first foothold in West End gambling. This, said Billy Hill, was where the fortunes of the future lay. Parliament was on the verge of legalizing gambling. The politicians claimed that this would hit the criminals, but Hill could see that it would really give the underworld the chance of a lifetime. With gambling legalized, the underworld would virtually be legalized as well. London could become the Las Vegas of Europe, and legalized casinos would have to be run by someone. Who better than the men who knew the work already? Men like the Krays. Provided they were sensible, they could not go wrong. Reggie and Charlie both agreed. Already they were modeling themselves on Billy Hill, and saw a golden future very near. They would polish up their image and concentrate on their clubs, leaving behind the rough and tumble of the East End dirty work. The understanding with the Italians would be consolidated. Their entry into West End gambling exploited for all it was worth, and then with Billy Hill as advisor, they would be set to take over a club or two in the West End, once gaming was legalized. From then on, life would be simple. No need for villainy. A good lawyer and accountant would handle their affairs and advise them where to invest their surplus earnings. They would be businessmen with a country house and a flat in town. They could move into property and betting shops and restaurants. Within a year or two, they'd have Rolls Royces and live part of every year abroad like Billy Hill. Ronnie could be taken care of properly. This was important. He could have everything he needed. The finest treatment, travel, boys, a discreet place in the country where he could be nursed during his attacks. Clearly, he would need all this, for he was in a dreadful way. Most of his time was spent huddled by the fire at Valence Road. The night Reggie brought him to the Double R, he had blacked out. Everyone felt sorry for him. Charlie thought that they should treat him to a cruise. He suggested this one night at Valence Road. Ronnie was furious. He'd heard about these cruise ships. They could do anything they liked once you were aboard. Some people never came back at all. Charlie tried reasoning with him. He could go first class to the Mediterranean or the West Indies. It would be good for him and get him well again. Charlie appealed to Reg, but Reggie was suddenly unsure and looked away. If Ron doesn't want to go, he doesn't have to. Leave him alone. I'll look after him, he muttered. Reggie kept his word and spent more time with Ronnie, drinking with him, driving him to the country and bringing friends to Valence Road for him. The more he did, the more demanding Ronnie seemed. By weekends, Reggie had usually had enough. He had his own life now. There was a girl he liked taking out. This was impossible with Ronnie around. So most weekends, Reggie would send his twin to the country with their boyhood friend, Checker Berry. Ronnie still trusted him, and Checker was quite big enough to look after himself. Checker had a farmer friend in Wiltshire. He would book rooms in the village pub, and he and Ronnie stayed from Friday night to Monday morning. Ronnie enjoyed the farm and got on perfectly with all the locals. He seemed a trifle slow, but otherwise quite normal. He didn't talk much, but was back on brown ale. He started riding. He was no stylish horseman, but enjoyed mastering his hefty mount. He took riding seriously, learning to canter, sitting the horse massively with ramrod back, as if the whole point of riding were a continual battle of will between man and beast, which he was determined to win. One morning, as he rode his weary nag back to the stable, he reined in to talk to Checker. He's turned them all against me, hasn't he, Check?
Who?
My Reggie. While I've been away, he thinks I'm balmy, and that I can't see what he and Charlie are up to. But I'm not balmy anymore. They'd better both look out, those two. Violet was happy. Ronnie was better, and her twins reunited, just like the old days. Ronnie in the big back bedroom, Reggie in the smaller room, off the landing. Nothing had really changed since they were boys. She was so grateful that she had them still to make a fuss of, and she was touched to notice that they had picked up their old habits, like taking off their watches and cufflinks every night, and leaving them on the kitchen mantelpiece before they went to bed. Reggie's on the left, Ronnie's on the right, and Ronnie was soon starting all his old tricks, telephoning his barber in the mornings, and ordering his shirts just as he used to. He even bought himself another dog, a great brown Doberman, which he kept in the yard and fed himself. When asked his occupation now, he would write dog breeder. It was good to see that his sense of humor had not suffered. The arguments had started up again between the twins. This didn't worry her, rather the reverse. They proved that Ronnie was back to normal. Years ago, she had taught herself never to listen to what they said. They didn't mean it. It only upset her. But if Violet had listened to the arguments between the twins, she would have noticed something. Ronnie was more aggressive. Reggie continually on the defensive. Ronnie said he was going soft with all his smart new friends, that he was wasting all his time on women. It was degrading. Reggie would try explaining all their plans for the future, but the arguments fell flat. Caution, economy, business prospects suddenly had no appeal. It was surprising how much Ronnie knew of what had gone on while he was away. There had been nothing disloyal about what Reggie and Charlie had done, but Ronnie made it sound disloyal, making allies with the Italians, listening to their old enemy, Billy Hill, straightening the law, avoiding trouble. You're turning into just a little crybaby. It must be all these dirty women you've been having. Although Reggie shouted back and knew that what Ronnie said was unfair, he had his first real doubts about the good life now. Reggie felt guilty and gave Ronnie all the money he could squander. A wardrobe of expensive suits, a new blue Fairlane automatic to match Reggie's yellow one. He also paid for Ronnie's weekend trips to Jersey. Ronnie had 2 new boyfriends, brothers, and since he dreaded being caught for homosexuality in England, he felt safer taking them to Jersey. Reggie imagined that these trips away were keeping Ronnie out of trouble in the East End, but Ronnie was emerging from his breakdown fast. Reggie's first warning came when he heard that Ronnie had been into a gambling club in Valence Road, threatening to break it up and asking for a pension of £10 a week. This was absurd, since Reggie was part owner of the club himself. But instead of facing Ronnie, he told the manager to pay him. Then came more serious trouble. Ronnie persuaded Reggie to take him to a meeting with the Italians. There was a matter of some delicacy to be discussed. A compromise over their gambling interests. Diplomacy was needed. Ronnie lumbered to his feet and started shouting that the Krays had no need of a bunch of cheap Italians. When he stormed out, Charlie attempted to apologize. Their friends were sympathetic. Of course, they understood about the poor boy and what he had been through in prison. But they all knew that nothing could be quite the same again. Ronnie had smashed 2 years of carefully nurtured understanding. This was the first time Reggie showed that he knew what was happening. He drove to Valence Road with an old friend and asked him wearily, "What can I do about Ron? He's ruining us. I know we ought to drop him. But how can I? He's my brother, and he's mad. Without me, God knows what he'll do." A fortnight later, there was a rally at the billiard hall. It was like old times with all the lights on, and the smoke and crates of beer and the Colonel back in his favourite chair opposite the door. There were a few old faces, but many more had come from other parts of London. The Colonel had been busier than anyone suspected. He looked delighted with himself. He wore a new blue suit, new spectacles, and held a gleaming cutlass. A huge dog slobbered at his feet and growled when anybody came close. Ronnie's 2 boys were there. He'd never been with them on show like this before. Reggie glared at them when he entered. They grinned back at him. Ronnie smiled. "All of the enemy will be at the hospital tavern tomorrow night," said a white-faced boy with spots. "All of them?" asked Ronnie. "The whole of Watney Street. They'll be expecting you." "We'll be expecting them." "It's time we got our own back for what happened when I went away. Some people think they can forget a thing like that. Some people have been getting soft. I think it's time we had a little war." Reggie said nothing. Next night, there was a full-scale bar fight at the hospital tavern. Both gangs were armed with knives and chains and knuckle dusters. But the twins proved invincible as ever. Reggie discovered something he had nearly forgotten, the strength that surged up in him as he and Ronnie lost themselves in a fight. He had no sense of danger, only of power, and a driving impulse to destroy. Nobody could resist them, and when the bar was empty, and the last of the Watney Streeters were scrapping in the street, Reggie was standing amid broken chairs and a carpet of smashed glass, not realizing that the fight was over. He took the microphone the singer used on Saturday nights, turned it full on, and bawled through the loudspeakers that if Watney Street wanted any more, the Krays were ready for them. No one answered. He shouted again, but the police cars were screeching up outside and everybody running. Then Ronnie was beside him, saying they must get away. As they slipped past the crowd, there were ambulances and blue lights flashing. At Valence Road, they both went through the old routine of cleaning up at their Aunt May's house next door before saying goodnight to their mother. Next day, the headline said the East End had had its worst gang fight for years. Neither police nor crime writers seemed to know why. From that night, Reggie's divided life began again. He became thin-faced, and his hunted look reappears in photographs. After a few gins, he could usually convince himself that everything was as it had always been. He had his car, his friends, his money, and his clubs. But however much he drank, he never seemed able to bring back the future he and Charlie had once planned so carefully. In the old days, he had been able to stand up to Ronnie. Now it was different. Ronnie was wilder, and once he was back with him, all of his other life seemed pointless and unreal. In the late 50s, London's gang battlefields were changing. Violence was building up in Paddington and Notting Hill, as rival groups horned in to milk the gambling, prostitution and rent rackets of West London. These were not Kraylands. There was no money here for them, and from the press exposés of the time, it was clear that the law would soon be cracking down, but Ronnie had been thinking about Paddington. It appealed to him. It was interesting. With so many rackets, so many chances of new villainy, that the East End seemed quite tame by comparison. Just past the Edgware Road, an authentic whiff of old Chicago hung in the air, with drinking clubs burned out with petrol bombs and tough young men in overcoats shooting at each other from moving cars. Ronnie was planning an alliance of gangsters to control London, something more grandiose than the timid plans his brothers had had with the Italians. Ronnie's idea was for a warlike federation, using violence to get power. One man would have to be the leader, somebody respected and feared so that his name was law. This was a worthwhile role at last for the admirer of Capone. With Reggie, he knew he could do it, but not if they stayed tamely in the East End. One gang in Paddington required help. If the twins gave it, they would have friends there, and the chance to move on to the West End. The planning and discussions of his idea occupied the Colonel's energies. Deals, secret meetings, payoffs, promises. And when the time for action came, he kept his word, leading his Cockneys into several of the bloodthirstiest fights West London saw in the summer of 1959. Reggie complained that they were wasting their time, but he was always there when it mattered. The Colonel felt that his scheme was working. Financially, it was a disaster. By alienating all those business-minded gangsters, the Krays relied on for their income. Ronnie destroyed 3 years' careful work in as many months. Certainly, they had no chance now of the neat slice of Mayfair gambling they had expected. The billiard hall closed down. The takings from the Double R and the Spieler in Wellington Way barely met Ronnie's extravagances. The Colonel's dreams of empire were expensive. The new gang needed to be paid, but Reggie's richer clients stayed clear now, thanks to the twins' new reputation. Before long, they would be broke. Thank you very much for watching. That brings this episode to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see